ברוכים הבאים לפודקאסט של שפות-שלי. אני האריאל, אני נמצא כאן עם ג'וש. How are you, first of all?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you, Ariel?
I'm doing good. It's a Thursday.
Yeah.
It feels like Groundhog Day for me.
It feels like a Friday.
What is Groundhog Day?
Groundhog Day is like when you wake up and it's the same as the day before.
שזה כאילו כל יום אותו דבר. עוד
Yeah.
יום, עוד שבוע.
עוד שבוע.
קוראים לזה Groundhog Day. אתה ראית את הסרט Groundhog Day?
I think so when I was younger.
Bill Murray.
Yeah. No, I do remember it. It was kind of overwhelming for me. I think
The guy
when I
from
was little.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I know. It was a bit
It was a bit frightening, yeah, just waking up and it's the same like over and over. Has to live the same day over and over.
It sounds like a nightmare.
Do you have a day? Do you have any day like that where you would love to live over and over a couple of times in your mind?
I don't know. Maybe like a Friday.
Friday.
A Friday, the same Friday over and over again.
But do you have a specific Friday offhand that you can think of?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I'll be honest with you. I've got 1 or 2 days where I wouldn't mind living it over and over again.
Yeah.
We actually had like the adrenaline boost of like the adrenaline flowing through my veins, adrenaline והכיף.
Okay.
כל מיני סיטואציות, חוויות, where I wouldn't mind living it over again and again.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to think about it the whole day or just that instance.
Just to know that what is anticipating you in the day is nice to live it over again.
Yeah, I gotcha.
אז יש חוויות. אוקיי, אז היום אנחנו נדבר על public speaking.
לדבר מול קהל.
לדבר מול קהל. Public, let's say, literal translation.
דיבור ציבורי.
דיבור ציבורי, public speaking, לדבר מול קהל. התרגום הליטרלי הוא לדבר לציבור.
כן.
Public זה ציבור. עכשיו בוא נדבר שנייה על, before we get into it.
Have you ever spoken in public before?
I have a couple of times, and I don't particularly like it. It's an adrenaline rush. It's nice, but it's not one of my favorite things to do. Have you done it before?
Yeah, I have.
And?
Well, I never really enjoyed it when I was younger. However, as a teacher, I've kind of learned to speak. I've kind of learned to speak in front of groups of people. Okay. Not huge groups of people, but relatively so. Yachasit. That's okay for me. I think like maybe if the crowd gets over maybe 20 people, it gets a little overwhelming for me.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what makes it overwhelming for you? Overwhelming. מה זה overwhelming?
Overwhelming זה כזה...
יותר מדי.
יותר מדי, כזה... זה פשוט... זה קשה להסביר אפילו.
Overwhelming זה כאילו אתה יותר מדי לא נעים כאילו.
כן. זה מרגש יותר מדי.
כן, מרגש יותר מדי. אוקיי, אבל תן לי, let's say, where would you feel overwhelmed? 10 people, 20 people, 30
well,
people?
What makes it overwhelming is I think it's the eye contact. האמת שיש כזה כל מיני, כל כך המון עיניים מסתכלים עליך.
אוקיי.
מסתכלות עליך, וזה פשוט כזה קשה. Because like for me, eye contact is like a very deep thing. Okay. And when you're speaking, sometimes you look around the room and you make eye contact with people. And to see all those eyes staring at you, it's kind of overwhelming. So I think that that's a big factor of it. To speak in front of a crowd where there is a light on you and you can't really see the crowd, I think is a little bit less frightening because you can't really see how large the crowd is.
Like in a stand-up comedy show.
Yeah. Or on stage.
On stage. Okay, normally, you know that אחד מהפחדים הכי גדולים של אנשים, generally, is public speaking. It's known as one of the...
More than death.
More than death, yeah. People prefer dying than speaking in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
It's just a fear of, these situations that sound terrifying.
אוקיי, אז בוא נדבר על כמה נקודות שאיך אפשר להתכונן, לדבר מול קהל.
Some tips.
Public speaking tips in English. Let's do this.
So our first tip is to obviously be prepared. So when most of us think about preparation, they think about, going through and doing all the normal things that they would do for whatever task they're going to be completing, right? Well, with, presenting in front of a group, the first thing that you would usually need to do is create a presentation, usually some sort of visual aid, some sort of still images, maybe with a little bit of text, that you can use to kind of base the idea and the train of thought or the direction or your pacing to kind of base your speech around that. So you have some sort of structure.
Okay, that will be a very easy go-to, very smart go-to.
It's a very good.
But what happens if you're not doing it with a slide?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, you can also use a handout, right? Or rely on other visual aids that don't necessarily rely on a screen.
Okay. כרטיסיות.
Okay, כרטיסיות, כן.
And what happens, let's say, what other advice could you be to be prepared? If it's a technical speech, you'll be looking to probably improve jargon and לעבור על כל הביטויים ולהתכונן בצורה נכונה, לוודא שאתה יודע לבטא את המילים נכון.
Yeah, it's always very important that if you're giving a speech on a specialized field, you have to actually know what you're talking about, even if you're going to be presenting about something that's relatively new for you. So what I would recommend is for when the person is making their presentation or making their speech, that they either add extra notes on the side as something for their visual aid that's not visible to the crowd, or to utilize the terms and make sure to utilize the terms enough in the speech correctly so that it becomes part of their vernacular, the person that's giving the speech, so that they are already comfortable with it. So if there's, a unique term or something that's necessarily unfamiliar to you, you should try to utilize it as much in the correct way so you can better understand it before you give the actual speech.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
So there's one of this it's kind of a cliche actually, or something that we תמיד רואים כזה, אפילו עם בסרטים, מתי שמישהו צריך לעשות speech, נכון? Is practicing in front of a mirror, right? So there's this kind of a notion that אם אנחנו יודעים איך אנחנו נראים, מתי אנחנו מבטאים משהו, מרגישים כזה יותר ביטחון, right? Okay. You feel more comfortable, more self-confident. And for many people, looking in the mirror is very pleasant. They feel very, very good about how they look. And to look in the mirror is a very positive thing, and it makes them feel confident. However, some people, especially when they're younger, often go through whatever sort of, discomforts, or, they feel uncomfortable about their body or how they look. Okay. And sometimes looking in the mirror can actually do the opposite and make about conscience, about things that can't necessarily change about yourself, or, maybe you're not even that big of a deal, and it can throw you off.
All right, so basically, התחלנו על טיפ מספר 1, להיות מוכן, be prepared. אז יש כמה דברים שאפשר להגיד פה. אחד, זה לעשות פרזנטציה עם תמונות שהן visual aids, שאתה יכול להסתכל ויכול לעזור לך להגיש את זה בצורה נכונה. 2, זה לכתוב כל מיני כרטיסיות בצד, אם אתה לא יכול להשתמש במצגת, כדי לעשות את זה קל יותר. 3, זה בעצם לעבור על כל המילים שקשה לבדות אותם. I'm sure that a lot of Israelis go through having to present an English presentation during their studies, either at university level or at school level, and stress out immensely because they aren't fully in command of the language. So in that particular case, probably the best preparation would be to just memorize it over and over and over. If you are, a lot of Israelis go through a situation where they have to make a presentation in English, and they are struggling with the language itself, עם השפה עצמה, לבטא את המילים, או לנסות פשוט, אין להם את הביטחון, להוציא את המילים באנגלית, הם חושבים שלא נשמעים טוב, או אין להם את היכולת, או פוחדים להתקע. So one, let's say, major preparation would be where the difficult parts, make sure you memorize them over and over and over again. And טיפ טוב, אתה דיברת להסתכל על מראה, יכול להיות to practice in front of a video camera and then take a look at it, or בין משפחה או משהו כזה.
Well, זה תלוי. Because יכול להיות שזה גם עושה לך את ההפך. I think that maybe if you record yourself as well, instead of recording with a video, record it audio and listening to how you pronounce things. Because like I said before, some people, they feel more uncomfortable when they look at themselves in the mirror.
Have you ever seen yourself getting filmed?
Yeah, and it's always very, very uncomfortable and awkward for me. I don't like to. So.
I think it's a very general feeling, would you say?
Yeah.
I think very few people would see themselves record and say, "Oh, I look great."
So generally speaking, if your future involves being in front of a camera a lot, you have to get used to it. But if this is just public speaking and it's not something you do all of the time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend standing in front of a camera.
Okay, let's go to the next tip that we have in store.
Something that we can all kind of relate if we think about when we've seen other people speak. When you're a kid and someone comes to your school, the speaker, oftentimes they kind of have a very booming language and presence. What is booming? Because a chazak, right? It seems like
they have a very strong presence.
Yes. Very good. And it exists both, visually and audibly, right? So it's a lot to do with how the speaker holds themselves and projects themselves. So here are some tips that you can do to improve your body language.
Okay. So you basically body language, שפת גוף. קודם כל להסתכל על הקהל. Face your audience. לעמוד בצורה מסוימת מאוד. Feet apart.
Yeah.
And make eye contact. לא ליותר מדי זמן, אבל לנסות להסתכל על הקהל בעיניים.
Yeah.
לא להישאר rigid.
מה זה rigid?
קשוח. לא להישאר באותו מצב.
קשוח, ישר, אי אפשר לכופף.
נכון, להיות natural, free.
Okay.
לא, avoid crossing your arms. לא לקפל את הידיים.
למה?
זה בדרך כלל קיפול ידיים. It's a negative body language.
Really?
שפת גוף שלילית מאוד. It's standoffish. אוקיי, לא להחזיק את הכפות ידיים סגורות ביחד, או מאחורי הידיים, או ידיים בכיסים, לא לשחק עם משהו בצד, don't fiddle with anything, fiddling, לשחק בצד, like a pen, or, just be expressive and do your best to make it natural, make it seem like you're born for this. כמו שמוחמד עלי פעם אמר.
What did he say?
He said, if you don't believe that you are the champion, act as if.
And then it'll come.
אז זה גם טיפ טוב. His whole mentality was before you even get into the battle begins before you get in the ring even. All right, so let's go on to another very important tip, which is probably one of the most important, let's say, it really sums it down to everything, and I would say conquering your fear. Okay, so I think this is like להתגבר על הפחד. עכשיו, זה יותר קל להגיד את זה, מאשר בפועל, שזה קורה בפועל, כי לחץ בעצם גורם על היכולת שלך to speak publicly, אבל אם אתה יודע מלכתחילה פחות או יותר איך זה הולך לקרות, לנסות to visualize the scenario as much as you can, and then it will go a lot smoother. It will create less nerves, and will enable you to perform well. Obviously, there are many different tips about לא לשתות קפה לפני ודברים כאלה. I don't think that should have much of an impact, but they can.
Depends on how much of a tolerance you have to caffeine.
They have been known to deal with nerves. They have been known people to use medication, pills such as Xanax. And they've been known to really treat, it's a fact.
Okay.
They've been known to treat like public speaking because it tones down your, let's say, if you're extremely nervous, it turns you down to just slightly nervous already to present. אז אנחנו לא דוקטור, אבל זה הדיבורים.
Talk to consult your doctor.
Consult your doctor. If you're really nervous about it, אם אתה ממש בלחץ on a speech, אז אולי כדאי to consider some kind of medication to make sure it goes well. Okay, now, what else can we discuss about public speaking, Josh? Knowing your audience.
This is a good one, right? Okay. So I've seen, I'm American, so I've seen quite a few on TV political rallies, politicians, trying to, politic and get people to like them. And not oftentimes, but every now and then we will see a politician say the wrong thing to the wrong crowd, as though the speechwriter, whoever was helping them, was misinformed, or it was something got mixed up, right? So if you're talking to, let's say, a group of kids or a group of adults, it's important to know what type of humor, what type of vocabulary to use, because obviously for children, using humor that's a little bit dark or uses really, really complex vocabulary is not a successful or effective way of going about things. Likewise, with adults, you want to maintain more of a mature tone. And if you are using humor, you want to make sure that that humor resonates with the age demographic.
Okay. And who do you feel, like who would be your example of a good public speaker?
It's a very good question. So despite politics, I would actually say that Benjamin Netanyahu was very much known as a very, very good public speaker. I mean, depending on who you ask, but despite what you may feel about politics, he has in the past done a very, he's done an all right job rallying, American politicians around whatever type of cause, he has at the moment, at least back in the day. Going back a couple years.
I've listened to him a few public speaking, seen him public speak many times.
Really?
I think one of his interesting ones, אם אתם רוצים לראות נאום, שהוא מאוד מאוד powerful and resonate and, let's say, knowing your crowd, knowing your audience, delivering with confidence. There was one on YouTube called Silence. If you search Benjamin Netanyahu Silence, it's a pretty famous one. doesn't matter, אנחנו לא פה כדי לדבר פוליטיקה או דעות של פוליטיקה, אבל לגבי נאום באנגלית, יכול להיות נאום מאוד מאוד מרתק לשמוע אותו, פשוט בצורה של הגשה. But if we go off politics, I think there are some incredible public speakers who managed to, let's say, really capture into the crowd. That includes comedians as well, because that's very, very hard to do.
But you see, you have to understand, though, is that comedians do have the sort of a crutch of being able to use humor, right? So when you're a comedian, it's expected of you that you're going to make the group laugh. And that can be pressure in and of itself. However, if that's your job, it usually comes a lot more naturally, right? So when you're giving a speech and it's not expected that you use humor, or it's a very, very serious topic, you don't actually have that crutch of creating a sense of camaraderie or, togetherness in the group by making a joke that everyone agrees that is funny, right?
Okay.
So it can be both ways.
I would say that it's surprising that you said Benjamin Netanyahu, because that is not your political view. But
yeah, we're not going to go there. It was the first person that came to my mind as far as someone that's very convincing.
You know who comes to mind? Is a really, really good public speaker, and he used to deliver killer presentations. גם מעניין לראות מאוד, גם באנגלית. אם לא ראיתם עד היום, you're missing out. It's on YouTube. Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs.
He used to do killer presentations. One used to be journalists would be in for an experience when he used to unveil a new product, or he used to just do it extremely well, build anticipation. כי בסופו של דבר, גם כשאתה מדבר, אפילו אם אתה לא לחוץ, ואפילו אם אתה רגוע, ואפילו אם אתה מכיר את הקהל שלך, אתה רוצה לשמור עניין. Keep the interest high, keep the tempo high, because people lose interest very quick. When they're sitting in an auditorium with 1,000 people and they hear one guy speaking, can get very dry very quickly. Yeah. So he used to know how to build anticipation and then just unveil the product, and everybody would be like, this is the greatest thing we've ever seen. We need this. We need one of these.
He was very good at that execution.
He was good at taking a product which is not a necessity and making it a necessity.
Making it appear.
Making it appear as a necessity. Yeah.
So we have one more tip for y'all. And this is a very important
tip. For
you all. בשבילכם. So I really like this tip because it's something I've kind of learned to, utilize even with my teaching, which is, even with a one-on-one is less sort of public speaking because it's more of a conversation, but nevertheless, it's still something that you can utilize, right? And that is the ability to enjoy the moment, right? So when we're usually going into a speech, usually the only thing we're anticipating and the thing we're looking most forward to is the end, right? To get through it, to get past it, this will be over soon, yada, yada, yada. However, it's actually very, very effective for your speech itself, but also for the experience, if you learn how to kind of be in the moment and actually enjoy what you're doing, right? And where does that come from? Well, the body releases endorphins when we feel stressed. And if we can learn to recognize these endorphins as something that's positive, it can actually change your mindset and make you feel positive. And when a speaker is, projecting positivity because they actually feel it, the speech almost always goes way more successfully, right?
Okay. That's an amazing tip, what you're saying.
Yeah. And I always experience this whenever I'm having, a lesson with, let's say, a VIP student or someone that's, very high stakes, has a lot to demand. Maybe the subject is not something that I'm super familiar with and I have to study up on it, right, to be able to talk and teach the student about it. It's still a little bit of the pressure, and it can be a little bit stressful sometimes. However,
of course,
because I love this job and I love the experience of interacting and also talking about it, I've been able to teach myself to actually enjoy the experience of the dialogue that takes place during the lesson, even if it is challenging.
Amazing. So, that is what you mentioned now. A lot of high-performance athletes, sometimes you see like a very big moment in sports where it comes down to, let's say, in basketball on the last throw, or in football, the last penalty kick, okay, like a big event. And you see you imagine to yourself the amount of pressure must be going through the player's mind. But like you're saying, they harness the moment to enjoy and be right in the moment and take it in a positive way. אז לתרגם קצת בעברית, כי אנחנו דיברנו 90% היום באנגלית, אז אנחנו מקווים שנהניתם, הבנתם, ואם לא, תודיעו לנו, אני נשלח לכם טרנסליטריישן של כל הפודקאסט. I'm joking. אנחנו לא נעשה את זה, אנחנו נצטרך לדבר בעברית עוד פעם הבאה. אוקיי, אז מה שאנחנו אומרים זה שבעצם, שגם ספורטאים וגם כשאתה נואם, יש רגע של אדרנלינה, של לחץ מסוים, לדעת להשתמש בו באופן חיובי, להיות בתוך הרגע, בתוך המומנט. That will be to say in Hebrew. All right, so I think that's a wrap. All right, אז מקווה שנהנתם, ואם יש לכם נאום בקרוב, ואתם צריכים עזרה, let us know, we'll be happy to help.
Yeah.
Especially if it's in English, give you a couple of pointers to be able to have vocabulary that you're comfortable with. That's probably the number one step. אוצר מילים שאתם נוח לכם איתו, אל תאתגרו את עצמכם במיוחד בנאום ציבורי, עם אוצר מילים שלא מרגישים איתו בנוח. ואם יש אוצר מילים שאתם לא מרגישים איתו בנוח, אז תוודאו שאתם מרגישים איתו 100% בנוח, כי יש עוד פרמטר של אדרנלינה ולחץ בתוך נאום.
כן.
And deliver it the best way you can.
Yes.
As thank you for the tips, Josh. That was a good, interesting point. You have a lot of experience, corporate experience, speaking to clients and also some very smart individuals, professional people who do well in their field. And אני בטוח שיש הרבה פרמטר של לחץ שאתה חווית אולי בהוראה מול ארגונים וחברות ואנשים חשובים.
כן.
And I think you've dealt with it extremely well. אז אני גאה בך.
תודה רבה.
אתה גאה בעצמך?
אני ממש גאה בעצמי.
יפה מאוד. All right, so that's what counts. And thank you for listening. תודה רבה למאזינים שלנו.
תודה רבה לכם.
We'll see you guys next week for another episode, another interesting episode. We have a surprise for next week.
Yeah.
Josh, we're working on a new topic right now. It's going to be a fun topic, an interesting topic.
Yeah.
So we'll see you again next week. Have a good evening. Have a good day. See you again.
Bye-bye.